this year.
Oh, boy.
Okay, we're recording. So I will be probably planning on getting a little bit more active once we return to having our lunchtime meetings, which.
Right, it's very difficult to run that club this way. I mean, there's no, it's completely different.
Yeah, it is. And as you have observed to me, I have not been able to attend really any of those Zoom meetings. It conflicts with things at the office. I get distracted and it's just,
Right.
it's not really feasible, but it works when we have those lunch meetings because I'm out and I don't have staff members popping their heads in every 5 minutes.
Right.
You know. I hope we'll be back to that soon.
So do I.
I didn't know if it was, with the,
Let me see if I can lower it.
Oh, but we were glad to have people back in the, we were glad to.
how are you? Good.
We were like,
My son got initiated.
so,
No kidding,
Yeah.
that's cool. And yours? Oh, that's cool.
So my two brothers.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. So we went through USC this week, so we couldn't go.
Oh,
So we're gonna have another thing in spring. I mean, fall.
we just had a meeting with the
Yeah, cool, you know?
Foundation Art Committee, so we got some interesting things coming out. It's gonna be cool.
I don't know if it's electronic.
It is, yes.
Yeah, and we're.
It locks it, magnet.
Put a new one, you know,
Yeah,
we're
it can be-
reigniting.
it can be
I guess,
physically
the ones
unlocked
we've
and
done.
yet
So
still be
excited about that. We've got some good stuff.
With that.
Okay. Tom, are we ready to start or we are not?
I believe we are. Let me go ahead and just share my screen so that everyone can see the agenda.
I mean, that doesn't matter.
And if you can confirm,
I see the agenda, but it's sort of moving over to the right, but I have it anyway.
Stuart, can you talk a little louder? We can barely hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
That's better.
yeah, a little bit. Let me see.
All right, I can pick up the microphone a little bit. Let's see if this works. Okay, can you hear me now?
That's better.
Okay, I call the meeting to order at 6:45 PM, 6:47 PM. Let's rise, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance first. I pledge allegiance to the
To
flag
the flag of the United States of America
and
to
to
the
the republic
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very good. Okay, Tom, would you please call the roster, see who is here?
Yes, Sharon Mayer,
Here.
Jonathan Peterson,
Here,
Daniel Buxa. Here. Roland Raffin,
Here.
Chairman Friedman,
Yes, here.
and I'll note that Town Council Liaison Leanne Mellon is here as well.
Very good. All right, we have the minutes before us of the meeting of May 11th, 2021. If everybody has reviewed the minutes, I would entertain a motion to accept these.
Mr. Chairman, make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
All right, Tom, would you call for a vote?
Yes, Sharon Mayer,
Yes.
Jonathan Peterson,
yes,
Daniel Buxa,
Yes.
Roland Raffin,
Yes.
and Chairman Friedman.
Yes. Okay, very good. We have several preliminary hearings tonight. The first item on the agenda I see here is BZA 21-002, Guy Costanza and of GM Contracting. Tom, would you advise us as to where we are with this now?
Yes, this, as you're aware, this project has been on the agenda for some time. It's been tabled multiple times. Met with the applicant this past week, and they've requested that it be placed back on the agenda for a preliminary hearing, and would like to present and request a public hearing. But this is a request from Guy Costanza and GM Contracting, representing the property owner Vince Crins, for approval of multiple variances for their proposed commercial development at 407, 411 Ridge Road. As you may recall, this project has been before the Board of Zoning Appeals. Before, there were a handful of variances granted for it. Those are shown in this table here. There was a commercial development proposed, and there were 3 variances originally granted, one for off-street parking. So there was a variance for 31 parking spaces to be permitted, provided that the number of seats in any proposed restaurant was capped. There was a variance granted for the minimum front setback, having a required 20-foot planting strip. And there was also a requirement from variance from the minimum 35-foot front building setback. Those variances were granted in May of 2000. The project was then brought to the Plan Commission and was not approved. In fact, it was tabled multiple times at the Plan Commission level, and then it was ultimately withdrawn from the Plan Commission in July of last year. A few months later, the project was resubmitted for approval to the Plan Commission. It was noted at that time that there were a number of additional variances that would be required to build the project as proposed. You'll see here it's a 2,500 approximately square foot building located on the southeast corner of the lot with parking lot. The variances that they're now requesting are from the maximum side setback, which is 24 feet. They're proposing a 77 foot setback on the east side of the building. They're requesting a variance from the frontage build out requirement, which is in this CD5 district is 80%. That frontage build out requirement is the percentage of the front lot line that is built out with the building. So the proportion of the front lot line that has a building adjacent to it. They're proposing approximately 39% frontage build out. They're requesting a variance from the requirement that entrances, the main entrance of a building be in the front facade. They're proposing that it be on the east side of the building. They are requesting a variance from the location of off-street parking, which is to be in what's called the third lot layer, which is 20 feet setback from the front facade of the building. They're proposing that they have parking in the second lot layer, which is shown here, which is essentially that 20 feet from the front facade back. And then finally, they're requesting a variance from the location of this required street screen, which is a screen of the parking lot and the parking area. It is to be located co-planar to the facade. So if you draw a straight line across the facade, as you can see, it's done here. They're to have a street screen located right here. In the plan that they had submitted, the landscaping plan, they proposed that it be here. So those are the variances that are being requested. As I said, at this time, it's a preliminary hearing, so the applicant would be requesting a public hearing at the next meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals. I've listed for you the standards by which a variance should be judged, a variance request should be judged. As a reminder, any applicant for a variance is required to address those criteria. I'll go ahead right now and just put the screen to the project site plan, and I'll just let you know that both the applicant, Guy Costanza, is here in the room, and I know he's being represented by Attorney John Reed, who is present on the Zoom.
Okay, so the petitioner wishes to speak, or the counsel, Mr. Reed wishes to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is John Reed on behalf of GM Contractors and Mr. Costanza and Mr. Krantz. Yeah, we had, obviously there's been various delays in the project for various reasons. The main one is I know the town is interested in who tenants will be in buildings that are being approved and what those uses will be. And not that town's always necessarily entitled to know that, because sometimes you can't disclose it. However, I think it's important, and it was at my time as well. So the two proposed tenants for the building at this point are Little Italy, which is a restaurant located in Dyer. They want to put in a to-go with no live seating, but basically a large kitchen with a to-go facility, and also a Domino's delivery carryout facility, roughly 50-50 of the building. So the prior variance is granted for parking. We were going to be limited to 77 seating positions. Maybe there will be 8, if any. So I think that's all helpful, but we think we can meet the criteria, hopefully, for the variances that we'd like to see granted on the property, and then ask for site plan approval thereafter. Really, I guess tonight's meeting is to get everybody back in tune with the project, and simply make a request from the Board of Zoning Appeals members to please place us on the schedule for the July 13th hearing date.
Thank you, Mr. Reed.
Thank you.
Are there any members of the board that would like to ask any questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Tom, I have a question. In regards to parking the second lot layer opposed, or in lieu of parking the third lot layer, does the town see that as a problem with, maybe not this use, but a future use of parking with backing up with traffic, or, you got people coming in and out of that entrance right there in the parking lot is literally, as you pull in, there's no buffer zone whatsoever. So you're pulling right off our apron and you're making a right-hand turn or a left-hand turn to park right in the spot right away. And those have cars backing in and out are the same as traffic trying to pull in there.
Mr. Raffin, if I might now, Tom, go ahead and jump in if I'm mistake myself, but in our discussion we had with Tom was kind enough to meet with us last week. We did discuss that exact issue, Mr. Raffin, and we're going to be pushing those spots back, those first spots, because now we're actually over parked. So, I mean, you can never really be over parked these days, but we'll be able to move those spots back so that they don't intrude on the ingress egress. I agree that would be difficult. You're backing out where people are pulling in, and that's not very helpful. So.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Yes, of course. Go ahead.
Mr. Reed, so when you're saying you're pushing them back, are you saying that there are going to be actually less parking spaces then?
Well, I mean, that's I don't know how else to do it. There's nowhere else really to put them, and we don't want to invade on landscaped areas and open space areas and the detention area. But we no longer, originally the plan was, and it didn't come to fruition, that there would be one small retail store here and possibly a cafe. Now that's not happening. It was parked, even with the variance, ma'am, for 77 seating positions within the building. There will be maybe 8, maybe none. It depends if Domino's has a couple booths or something, but there won't be that call for that number of people on the site.
But the position of the building would remain where it's shown. You would just eliminate a few spots. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think it would probably be the first handicap spot that you'll see that would be the front of the building, just to the east of the front facade. And then I think also the space almost straight across from that, the first spot there be eliminated. That would get the distance of the 20 feet, I believe, that for the safety margin.
Okay.
Chairman?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear. Miss Mayor, do you have?
Oh, no, that answered my question, Stuart.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Mr. Reed, Mr. Costanza, one thing I wouldn't want to see, and I never see it in good developments in town, in good towns, is seeing a detention pond right off of our main road. I think this property would have to be looked at, having underground detention to make it more attractive and better product in the town. I don't agree with putting a detention pond right off of our commercial roadway. And there's ways of doing underground detention without having a pond right there.
Well, and frankly, that's been a subject of some discussion, Mr. Raffin, between us and Mr. Tarenga, the engineer. There are more than adequate sewers there on site, right off site, actually, and on site that would handle the water flow here. I want to try, and we've talked to staff about this, and I get that rules are rules, and I know why, but I gotta say, guys, this is a 2,500 square foot building and a parking lot, and there used to be 2 homes there. But I don't know. I mean, the hardscape hasn't changed by much on the whole lot. I'm sure the parking lot, it certainly takes up more than the 2 homes and driveways used to, but we are talking about, I don't know that we're talking about thousands of gallons of water. I think we're talking about dozens, even in a serious storm. So I want to be careful with it, that you come to a point, you can only spend so much money on a 2,500 square foot building. And I want to be careful a little bit with that, but we're not wild about the detention pond either.
No, and John, to be honest with you, my vote is I would not be supporting a project with a detention pond on Ridge Road.
Yeah, if you look, it is actually, it would be off Manor on the other side of the railroad tracks. You would not see it from Ridge. Ridge it would be the detention area. If you look, Mr. Raffin, it is back right next to where the Monon on the slide that's up now, right next to the Monon railroad tracks. I don't know that you'd see it from Manor, and that's because that railroad bed's going to be high, obviously. You probably, if you're parking in the parking lot, you'd see it.
Or thousands of riders on a train back and forth daily, right?
And it could be too.
May I add something? This is Dr. Tarenga.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Tarenga.
The landscaping plan that is being proposed is showing that there will be landscaping around the exterior of the detention pond. You won't probably, it will grow to the point where you won't be able to see it from the train. And we're not talking about a open detention pond. We're talking about a grassed area that will be no more than 2.5 to 3 feet deep. The entire area is all sand. So it should work fine. An underground detention for this would probably add, 20% to the cost of the project, and that just doesn't seem reasonable.
Thank you, Mr. Tarenga. Do you have anyone else on the board have any questions of the petitioner? Comments? If not, then I'll entertain a motion to set this matter for a public hearing.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
make a motion to set this for public hearing and that petitioner comply with all town's notice requirements.
thank you. Is there a second for that motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. I will call for the vote. Tom, would you please call for the vote?
Sharon Mayer,
Yes,
Jonathan Peterson,
Yes,
Yes.
Roland Raffin,
Yes.
Chairman Friedman.
Yes. Very good. Matter is now set for public hearing. We're going now to the second item on the agenda. Second item is, let's see, BZA 21004. The Good Oil Company is requesting a conditional use permit. Tom, would you explain to the board what is happening here?
Yes, Good Oil Company, which is the owner of the property at 9451 Calumet Avenue, is requesting actually two things, and that this docket number as well and the next one are linked. But they're proposing to reopen a car wash at their Marathon gas station at 9451 Calumet Avenue. And as I said, there's two actions that are associated with the reopening of the car wash. The first is this docket 21-004, which is an application for a conditional use permit. A conditional use permit is, or I'm sorry, a car wash is considered an auto-oriented use in our zoning ordinance. In a CD 4A district, which is where this is located, that is a conditional use. Some of you may recall that this was a car wash in the past. It has been more recently part of the auto repair shop and has now been operated as a car wash for much longer than a year, which is the period of time that it takes for a conditional use to expire if it's been ceased, if it's not in operation. So, that being said, this is the site here located on your screen. You might recall that this is Calumet Avenue. This is the former 45th Street. This is the gas station here. There are two gas pump canopies. And this building right here, this accessory, it's a 965 square foot accessory building, is the proposed car wash. As I said, it's a conditional use. If it's okay with the chairman, I'll just briefly describe the variance that's involved in it as well. Not to jump the gun, but the building itself does not comply with the minimum setback standards. So it's also going to require a variance. I'm sorry, the maximum setback standard. So an accessory building is to be located again in that third lot layer, so 20 feet back from the front facade of the building, of the primary building. This you can see is essentially at the same setback. So it doesn't comply with our setback standards, and it also has expired as a conditional use. A conditional use, I'll just mention, is a permitted use under certain circumstances, and those are listed here in the staff report as the criteria for approval. The Board of Zoning Appeals needs to make a determination whether or not they're meeting these conditions with this use, and then make a recommendation to the town council, favorable, unfavorable, or no recommendation. Public hearing is required for this use, or for this action, and that would be the request tonight to grant a public hearing. I will show you one more exhibit, which is the overall site plan for the property. This is a site plan that was approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals some years ago in connection with the development plan approval. But as you can see, just generally speaking, car wash, because it was formerly a car wash, the site still is such that it can accommodate the car wash. There's substantial amount of stacking space for cars. And there's really sufficient access from Calumet Avenue and Columbia Avenue to the site. So they're not proposing any additional improvements beyond just the interior remodel of that building into a car wash. So that being said, I do believe we have representatives from Good Oil on Zoom. And if you'd like a presentation or to hear anything further.
Thank you, Tom. I will allow the petitioner to speak. Please identify themselves and tell us what you would like.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
My name is Justin Schramm. I'm the corporate attorney for the Good Oil Company. I also have with me here Chuck Ryan. He's our Chief Operating Officer for the Good Oil Company. And I want to thank everybody first and foremost for your time this evening. If I can just jump right in, prior to the submission of the conditional use variance and also the variance for the setback allotment, we did have a chance to meet with the site plan committee just to review some of the basics of the site. You know, we discussed the setback of the accessory building, just to quantify that number. I know when we talk about a non-compliant building, you know, it's good to have quantifiable numbers. To my understanding, the setback parameters for an accessory building to a main use is 20 foot. That car wash is 18 foot 2 inches, so approximately 22 inches short. Again, not to downplay the significance of a non-conforming accessory building, but I at least wanted to bring that to everybody's attention so we didn't think we were, you know, half the distance short that we needed. You know, one thing that I mentioned at the site plan committee, and I also want to thank Tom. Tom has been great to work with. He's really helped us with submitting documentation. But, you know, one of the things that the site plan commission, or that I told the site plan commission, was we recognize that Columbia Avenue and Calumet Avenue it has been a largely improved area of the city. We know that there's been improvements via a medical center and other improved buildings around the area. And we want to be partners with the town in making sure that this site is not just, you know, of utilitarian purpose, but also, you know, cosmetically pleasing. You know, again, I represent the Pulaski County Planning Commission here, and it's a thankless job, but, you know, honestly, one of the things that you have to look at as a BZA is not just, you know, does this serve a utilitarian purpose in the health, safety, and welfare of the community, but, you know, quite frankly, is it pleasing to look at? And there's certain aspects of this site that, in conjunction with the town, and if you allow us to proceed forward with this process, we would like to work to improve, cosmetically speaking. You know, we also understand that there has to be some fencing installed. Our current signage on the building needs to be changed because I believe right now it's a vinyl sign, but, you know, that's something we discussed with the site plan committee. We are here to answer any questions you may have. One question that I can't remember, I apologize, who asked the question during the site plan committee meeting for safety purposes. She wanted me to verify that the separator existing on the site that services the car wash is functional. After being down for a year, I have verified that the separator is functional. It's up to code. Again, we would just like to return the car wash for use as a car wash. It's not, you know, it's not our intention to continue to operate the mechanic bays as a mechanic shop, because in the past, to be quite frank, there's been some unsightly use of the property. And we, again, being partners and a company that wants to remain here long term, we don't want anyone to take any action on this property that would detract from, you know, an otherwise advancing area of the community. So, you know, Chuck is here as well to answer any pointed questions you may have. But we would respectfully ask that the conditional use variance and also the variance for the setback be set for a public hearing.
Thank you. Would any member of the board like to ask any questions of this gentleman?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Doug. Go ahead. Please proceed.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for the petitioner. I'm looking at the renderings, and it looks like, am I misreading this? This is an older rendering of the property. I don't believe 45th Street runs through there. I thought that was closed off. Mr. Vanderwood, maybe you could chime in and help me with my understanding of this.
That is correct, Mr. Peterson. This is an old site plan that was submitted. It's not a newly drawn site plan. This was submitted to the town in connection with this application, but it was originally approved by the town some years ago as part of an overall like landscaping improvement.
Well,
Yes.
in light of the fact that this is not an accurate rendering, I would ask the petitioner return with an accurate rendering. I don't think we're in a position to be able to take a vote on this if we aren't able to accurately understand what is being proposed. And I think the layout of the streets and access, street access and things of that nature, that's a fundamental requirement for something like this.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I do see that the initial schematics that you have in front of you, I believe, were approved by the BZA in 2013, February 12th, I believe is the note that I have here. That is, I can appreciate that. I guess we'd initially submitted this application because the building and really the pertinent part of the pertinent part of what we're asking, I guess, is still in the same spot. However, we do understand the nature of traffic flow, and if 45th has been modified in some way by the town, then an accurate rendering of traffic flow would probably be pertinent to your analysis. What are your thoughts, Chuck? Oh, I don't know if Chuck can hear me.
Sorry, I was stuck on mute there. We understand that 45th Street has been closed. The only change is the closure of the one access point, the one egress on 45th Street. We submitted the plan this way. We assumed it was appropriate because the portion that we're asking for is not impacted by the 45th Street closure. So that's why we went forward with this application in this manner.
So are you indicating that, are you willing to submit an accurate rendering or not? That's what we'd like to know.
We would be willing
Yes.
to submit an accurate rendering, although it would delay our application and our business is being impacted. Our business has been severely impacted by the closure of 45th Street. We're simply trying to determine whether we can successfully operate this business. And if we don't understand, we won't understand that unless the car wash is a part of it. We don't intend to in the future at all use the auto repair facilities. In fact, if the car wash is successful, we have a plan to completely raise and rebuild this site into a site that is more fitting to the Calumet restructuring that has gone on over the past few years.
So I have a question. I haven't been by the Marathon site since they closed, they changed 45th. Are you still selling gas from that site at this point?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it's your intention to operate the car wash facility and dispense gas?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
Mr. Chairman, I've got a follow-up question to that. I thought I heard Mr. Ryan say they're planning on tearing the facility down and rebuilding completely. Why are we doing this tonight? That's like that. We have a dated rendering. It sounds like they're just seeing if they're testing the waters here. And what they really have in mind is something completely new. Why don't we just cut to the chase? Mr. Ryan, if that's what you're planning, why don't you submit a rendering of what you're contemplating so that we can look at it and decide whether to approve it or not. I think let's just go straight to what you're intending rather than come at this from half measures.
Well, we're in a contractual obligation there with a leasee that has 4 years left on the contract. We don't have the ability to take it over as the good oil company. Once that occurs, then we would, but unless we can figure out if the leasee can survive there without the car, we can't survive the way it is right now. It'll just linger on. So for us to be able to determine whether it has the value raise and rebuild it, that's 4 years down the road. So there's really not a point to that at this juncture.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I've got another follow-up question.
Go
If
ahead.
this, if the property is possessed by a lessee, where is the lessee? Candidly, they're the party in interest here.
Good
have
Oil
they-
is the owner of the property. The lessee is simply renting from us the facilities.
Well, okay, I mean, I'm an attorney, Mr. Ryan, and I have a little bit of knowledge in this area. And when you have a commercial lease, the lessee's got rights of possession. Yes, you're the landlord and you've got a reverter right, but they're the ones that have the rights of possession and use of the property. In theory, they would be the ones that would be responsible for constructing this car wash or maintaining it. Where are they in this whole picture?
They're not in attendance, sir.
Well, with respect, Mr. Peterson, chiming in also as a fellow attorney, I would say that, I mean, your privity is with the site owner. I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the applicable portion of the of the code series, I think, contemplates the property owner making application. Now, you may request that they attend for the obvious reason that we don't want to have any type of disconnect between owner and lessee, but ultimately, you know, privity lies between the site owner and the lessee. Again, not to disrespect your request, you know, if that's something that you would like, we are happy to do that. But again, for purposes of ownership and privity and petition, you know, I think that the site owner is the go-to person from the city's perspective. If there were any type of disconnect, again, being a municipal attorney myself, you know, my recommendation to my municipal clients are, we don't have privity of contract with your lessee, whether that's utilities or otherwise. We go after the property owner. So if that's something that the BZA would request, we are happy to have the lessee also take part in this hearing. However, I don't know that from a legal standpoint that is 100% necessary. Again, with all due respect, I don't mean that in a disrespectful manner. But
well, Counsel, I'm going to push back on you here. This standard, there has to be a compelling showing for the variance that's being requested. And you've got a site operator and you're making representations on behalf of the site operator. They're definitely, however you characterize it, they are definitely involved in this process. They're the ones that are going to be operating the site for the next 4 years based on what Mr. Ryan has said. I'd like to know what they intend. Are you, for example, is the petitioner merely making this petition to gauge whether this site's going to meet their long-term objectives? And the site operator has no intent to actually operate this washing facility. I'd like to be able to ask some questions about what's being intended here. I think that requires the lessee, as you characterize them, to be able to come in and testify. Now, if you're prepared to make representations on behalf of your occupant that you will bind yourself to, then that's a different story.
We are prepared to make those commitments.
yes, sir.
Mr. Schramm, you know, in the past, when we've had these situations before the Board of Standard Appeals, we basically have asked for a document produced showing that you have power of attorney to act on behalf of the tenant with respect to their representations. We'll take your statements at face value, but I think it would make everybody more comfortable if at the next meeting, you present documentation that you do in fact speak for the tenant.
Yes, sir. I'm happy to do that.
Dave Whitlam here. I am of the opinion, given the conversation and the tenor of the comments, that we should see the lease. The lease that is in effect currently. Perhaps the applicant can provide that to us, please.
Is that a request that the board would second? That would be something that we would have to get approved by our executive committee, as it's, you know, business records with proprietary information. I'm not saying that we would decline that request, but if it's a board request, I would like to wrap that into any type of revised petition that we would file. I guess I would just like to, for brevity's sake, be able to wrap your requests up all into one ball if there's
Yeah, I would like to see it, but I understand the confidentiality part of it, and if you want to redact those sections that are sensitive, that would be acceptable to me.
Mr. Wicklund is, of course, legal counsel for our board, and I think that he has merit in what he's asking. We merely want to see, that you represent the tenant and that the terms of this lease are as such that you represent it to us. You can certainly redact any confidential provisions that you feel are not relevant to the issues at hand.
Yes, sir. I will. Again, I don't want Chuck to be angry with me for saying this. There is a provision in our current lease that states that we would do our best to get this car wash operational. That's something as I drafted the lease within the last year. And again, don't take my word for it. I'm happy if the executive board approves that, to submit that. But again, that's just something I would like to throw out there. Just to let you know that the lessee and us have contemplated the situation and are going through the petition in order to make this happen. But again, I will check with my client's executive team, and if that sounds like it's the wish of the board, then that's something that we will discuss and consider.
Yeah, we want to cooperate with you, and it is clear that obviously due to the construction of 45th, that economically your gas sales have probably plummeted considerably. I know you don't have to indicate the percentages to me. It's pretty obvious. I wasn't even aware that the gas station was open as a gas station anymore because there were no signs up indicating that it was open. I mean, when I drove by, it looked like it was closed because I used to buy gas there. So this is all news to me at this point. You should be aware of that.
Well,
Chairman, may I ask a question?
Sure.
So, and this is the first instance that I can think of in 20 years being on this board of the owner of the property coming instead of the tenant. Usually it's the tenant that comes and requests variances, in similar instances. So this is a little bit different. But what I'm curious about is how long has your tenant been your tenant at this site?
I believe we opened the site in February. We reopened the site in February. And if I could just state that since we have signed this lease with this tenant, and I think Mr. Vanderwood could attest to this, is that Good Oil has done everything that they have asked us to do, and we would continue to do that, whether it's on behalf of the tenant or it's on behalf of Good Oil. Good Oil is an 80-year-old Indiana company. The Good family has been here for that long, operating all over northern Indiana, and we will not let our name be impugned by, even if we have a leasee. We will step in and employ the resources necessary to maintain that property. So, and I think Mr. Vanderwood could attest that we have done everything that we've been asked to do to show that.
So when the lease was signed back in February, was it contingent upon your being able to reopen that car wash?
It was not. The leasee wanted to reopen the car wash and the bays. We knew, because we had spoken to Mr. Vanderwood, we knew that we had to go through the special use permit again. We advised the leasee that we didn't think it was a good idea to reopen the bays. We didn't think it was the appropriate business model for Calumet Avenue based on what Calumet Avenue looks like today. We think that a car wash and a gasoline station with a convenience store could do well there. Chairman Friedman's correct. 45th Street has impacted the business. So we're simply trying to ascertain whether or not we can operate that business in a successful manner for possible future redevelopment.
So, but if they're your leasee, why do you get to determine whether or not they open the bays or not?
We didn't determine that. We advised them. and they agreed to that.
Okay,
Well, we're probably digressing from the goal here. My initial reaction, Mr. Peterson, to your request about the revision to the drawing, I think that we can manage with the drawing that is shown on the screen. We all know that 45th was abandoned, east of Columbia Avenue. But I would say that it does look ridiculous having that curb cut there on 45th that should be closed and landscaped properly. I don't know if that's something that we can accomplish as part of this variance, but I think it's something that needs to happen.
Yes, we've already agreed to that.
Mr. Chairman,
yes, go ahead.
this is a comment to the representatives of Good Oil Company. I sat on this commission in 2013 when you guys went through your rebranding and remodeling of your facility. At that time, the property was in disarray. Has it been kept up better? Marginally. I'm not sure how often you come to town and inspect this property, if it's once a month, if it's once a year, if it's once a week, but I drive past it every day. It's continued to be kind of an eyesore on there. I know you were closed down for a while, but there's been weeds in the landscape. There's been fencing that hasn't been up, plants not taken care of, grass that's pretty dry and brown all season. That might be time for you guys to put an irrigation system in with this variance, but it hasn't been a gem like you gentlemen are trying to portray, because I drive past this facility every single day, multiple times a day. So before these variances are granted and stuff, I want to see what kind of commitment you're going to make sure this property is better, because in my opinion, you haven't lived up to your bargain from your 2013 rebrand of your facility.
Yeah, something that we had discussed in this executive team, because we understand that there is some trust that needs to be earned back. And we are more than willing to do that. I'm not even sure if this is a possibility. Perhaps your own legal counsel can advise you to that effect. But even if it's just for example, a 1-year grant of a conditional use, just to make sure that, or a 2-year grant of conditional use, and we revisit the subject. If we progress and obviously to a public hearing, the town council approves your recommendation. I think that the executive team would agree to a temporary conditional use subject to, us following through on some of the things that we are telling you we're going to do. I don't know that we portrayed this as a gem. I think one of my first statements was we realized that there had been activity in the past that, and especially to the site plan committee, I think Tom can probably attest to that we understand there's things that's happened on this property that quite frankly is not conducive of our business models, a family-owned business, and we want to do better. We do. You've undertaken a lot of cost and expense and time, and even the fact that you're sitting there in that room having this discussion with us is a testament that you want to better this area. So again, it's something that we've talked about. If it's a conditional improvement of use, for a year period or 18 months to show that we can follow through and improve the property, I think that we'd be amenable to that. But again, we do understand that there has to be some trust that needs to be earned back. We realize that.
Thank you.
You earn that trust after 18 months and the car wash is conditional use is taken away. Would you recommend taking down the structure and restoring it to pavement or landscaping?
Well, it's certainly something. I don't want to bind the executive committee because we do everything by majority vote, but it's certainly something that I would, that it could be a matter of contract. If it's something that the only way that this is going to be approved is conditioned upon improvements to the site, and if that doesn't happen, there's certain conditions subsequent that'll need to happen, then that's something that we can include as a matter of contract. Again, I would defer to your legal counsel to whether or not we can do that. I've not dug into the subject specifically, but it's something that we would be happy to take back to the executive committee and see what type of commitment we would make to do that. I don't know what you think, Chuck.
Yeah, I mean, we would be willing to improve the aesthetic value of the property in the short term. We've agreed to the fence. I thought the fence was reinstalled. I think we were waiting for one of the curbs to be completed. And then it was going to go up, but I mean, we'd be willing to continue to improve the property. We've done so already. It was difficult as we entered into this agreement in the middle of winter. I had actually just started with the company then, so I wasn't here for 2013. I can't comment on that, but we would be willing to improve the aesthetic value of the property to help improve the Calumet Avenue area. I mean, you've done a lot there. You've beautified it, and I mean, I would think I can speak for the company when I say we would improve the property if with whatever means you would instruct us to do. And I think Mr. Vanderwood would say that we did what we were supposed to do to open this originally, and we haven't been asked to do more, but we would.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Mr.
I
Whitman.
can verify that as of last year, when they had presented plans to reopen the gas station, we held them off from doing so until they agreed to a certain number of property maintenance improvements. Last year, during the period of time when the gas station was not operating, primarily, I believe, due to the underpass project, there had been a number of issues identified from a property maintenance perspective. So we had listed those out, and they had agreed to do a certain number of them as weather permitted, and they have followed through on that.
Okay, Mr. Wicklund, I'm just curious, can you give us, are we allowed to put a time frame on the conditional permit? Can you do that?
We'll give it a try here, Stuart. You can clearly add conditions to the granting of a conditional use. I'd have to take a look at the law about
Okay,
granting it on the one hand and taking it away if in fact they haven't complied. I think that could be done as well, because you've been, as a condition, you've been asked the owner or the applicant for a contractual obligation. In other words, enter into a contract with them whereby if they don't comply with the conditions, that in fact it can be taken away. However, I would want to verify that, take a look at the law.
all right, well, thank you, Mr. Wicklund. Yeah, I would request that you do so, and you can get back to us so we know we're better prepared on this issue for the next meeting. Are there any other members of the board that would like to ask some questions of the petitioner? There being, yeah, go
Mr.
ahead.
Chairman,
Go ahead.
I will make a motion to set for public hearing petitions 004 and 007 contingent upon either an affidavit of representation or the presence of the lessees at said public hearing. Also a copy of the lease, and ideally an updated rendering, as well as compliance with all Munster's notice requirements.
I'll entertain a second for that motion. Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, I'll second that.
All right, then I call for the vote. Tom, would you recite the roster, please?
Sharon Mayer,
Yes.
Jonathan Peterson,
Yes.
Daniel Buxa,
Yes.
Roland Raffin,
Yes.
Chairman Friedman.
Yes.
Motion carries. And just to clarify, that has two separate public hearings. The first for BZA 21-004, which is a conditional use permit request, and secondly, BZA 21-007, which is a request for a variance from minimum setback standards.
Very good. Very good, gentlemen. We look forward to seeing you next month, and please proceed with what we've requested.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, council.
The next item on the agenda is, I believe it's Smoothie King, Mr. Parth Patel. This is BZA 21005. Tom, would you explain what this is all about?
Yes, similar to the last two items on the agenda, There are three related items related to a single project, which is the redevelopment of 8130, 8138 Calumet Avenue, which I'll apologize in the agenda. There's an error. It says 830 to 138. So that's a typo there. In any case, this project is a proposal to consolidate those two lots and to construct a single Smoothie King smoothie restaurant, I guess you could call it, on the two lots with a drive-through and a small parking lot. There are three, as I said, three applications connected to this. The first is for a conditional use permit for a drive-through in the CD4A district. A conditional drive-through is permitted, but only under certain conditions. The second is for two variances. The first from the minimum parking ratio, and second for the maximum number of curb cuts. And then the third application is for a conditional use permit for an outdoor dining patio. So the conditional use permits each have their own sort of unique sets of criteria. The variance is a different set of criteria, but in any case, the site is located here, 8130, 8138 Calumet Avenue. Currently, there are two vacant buildings. This building here is the former Soul Spa, I believe, which has been vacant for many years. And then this is a former Munster Animal Hospital, Animal Clinic. Both of these properties are owned by Bruce Boyer. The applicant is Parth Patel, who is a developer, and he has, I believe, a contract to purchase the property. I will just kind of go through each one of these petitions and kind of describe them a little bit for you. Pull up the site plan. So the proposed site plan, as you can see, has a small building located on the south part of the site. There is a covered patio area that kind of extends off the northeast corner of the site. There are two curb cuts. The north curb cut is a right-in, or is it entrance only, off of Calumet Avenue. Vehicles enter, line up in two queues to place their orders, and then exit along the south side of the building on Calumet Avenue. There are a few items to note on this site plan. The first is that there's a proposed exit to the south along a town-owned alleyway, which runs parallel to Calumet Avenue up to 30th Street. And then there's also a 20-foot, I see that this is actually not the most recent site plan that has been provided. Let me see if I can pull up the most recent one. This one, because I'm not seeing the correct one here. There's a 20-foot easement as well along the south side of the property, 10 feet on the applicant's property and then 10 feet on the property to the south. And that's for a shared driveway. So what the proposal is, and I'm sorry, because this is actually the wrong site plan that I'm showing here. Let's see, it's on one of the other ones.
Tom, is the one you're looking for dated May 28th, 2021? Is it
Actually,
on
it should be June 7th.
June 7th?
Yeah, it's literally just a brand new one that I think I literally sent to Tom a day or so ago.
Yeah,
That
so
because
that one, that site plan didn't get put onto the agenda. Because you
Okay.
sent this week. But this is the most recent site plan. I apologize. One of those staff reports has a previous version. But as you can see,
Pull it up, Tom, so I can't see. Tell me what changed as you're going through it between the ones that we have and then what you have.
so this is on the website. It's just under one of the other staff reports. So I'm looking right now at the staff report for the conditional use for the outdoor dining patio. But again, like I said, the building is here. The thing that's changed from the other site plan is this site plan shows a 10-foot driveway easement along the south edge here. So there's like I said, there's a 20-foot driveway easement, 10 feet on this property, and then 10 feet on the property to the south. So the plan shows the exit of the drive-through on, not on that easement, but on a dedicated drive aisle exiting out to Calumet Avenue. This remains clear as a, like it's a bypass lane. But what you don't see here, which is on the site plan that was sent this week, is the other 10-foot easement, which is on this property. So the plan hasn't changed. It just shows that easement in the building to the south. So what you have here is a 32-foot driveway. So that being said, there are variances being requested for the number of curb cuts, which in this district is a maximum of 1. They're proposing 2. And then there's also a variance being requested for the number of parking spaces. They're proposing 13, and the required number is so the required number would be 24. Now, the applicant has provided some additional information from his other stores that I'd like to explain today, that kind of talks a little bit about how many parking spaces he actually needs. But the proposal is to have the vast majority of the customers using the drive-through lane. The other conditional use that I mentioned is for this outdoor dining patio. And again, this is something that was kind of added onto the building in order to meet our frontage build-out requirements. So while it's there, it's not intended to be used as like an integral part of the restaurant. It's going to be sort of an accessory to it. There will be no table service or anything out there. In fact, the furniture that has not been determined yet. So whether or not there'll be tables or chairs or benches or counters, that hasn't been determined by the applicant yet. So as I said, each one of these items requires a public hearing. And so tonight you're being asked to grant 3 public hearings, 1 each for the conditional uses and then 1 for the variances. Ultimately, the conditional uses each require approval by the town council as well. And with that, I know that the applicant, Mr. Parth Patel, is on Zoom and able to give a more detailed presentation.
Thank you, Tom. Mr. Patel, would you like to speak to the board, please?
Yes, thank you. So a few things that I wanted to clear up. Basically, that southern curb cut that's going to be 32 feet wide that we're proposing, I spoke with the southern property owner Fred Baker, and they mostly use that driveway currently as an exit onto Calumet. A lot of their clients and actual employees use 31st and then come up the back to actually park at their site. So they're mostly using this driveway as an exit, and that's how we're trying to propose it, as an exit only. So I know Tom earlier said that we would be using that easement in the back to go north and south. With the widened curb cut, we would literally just be using that secondary curb cut as an exit point for both our clients as well as the southern property. And as far as the parking goes, I believe Tom might have misquoted the number. I think the code requires 5 per 300 square feet, and our building interior square footage is 1375, so it puts us at around 23. And we're proposing 14 total stalls if you include the ADA. The patio, like Tom was saying, we added that to include as frontage because we've tried to reorient the building, but that would cause traffic to be in the path of pedestrian traffic along the sidewalk and the building. So the only way that the site configuration really works out for us is by having the 2 curb cuts. And the main reason why we're trying to get the conditional use for the drive-through is drive-throughs typically do about 20% more in sales based on the purchase price for the redevelopment of this property, because we're estimating a total cost of around 1.8 million. To meet that debt service that we're going to have, we would need the additional volume from the drive-through. That's why we have to have the drive-through for this site redevelopment to really work out for us.
All right, Mr. Patel, do you have anything else to add?
No, I'm free to answer any questions that you guys might have, though.
Okay, very good.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, go ahead.
this is Commissioner Rappin. Looking at this, I have big concerns with having a drive-through on this property. I worry about stacking on Calumet Avenue during your busiest times. I have a daughter that works at Dairy Queen as a high school student. I go in to pick her up and I cannot even pull into those parking spaces into that Dairy Queen to be able to pick her up from work because of the cars waiting to go through the drive-through. Doesn't give me the ability to pull in that lot. I will not support a drive-through at this property. I understand it works great for Smoothie King and your property to be able to turn a profit on there, but it does not work for the residents of Munster. I don't want to see 2 entrances. We worked hard on our work study plan about trying to reduce curb cuts in this town. And I don't want to see extra curb cuts made on properties, especially to limit pedestrian access and also cause traffic headaches on one of our busy thoroughfares. Across the street, Mr. Boyer has a great development that I go to quite often, and Five Guys and Chipotle don't have a drive-through yet. I seem to navigate myself really well into those 2 properties of his. I just think it's a tough fit in this thing, and I've been stacked up way too many times in Dairy Queen. The Smoothie King is a healthy base product. I think people can make a few more steps to walk in your door.
Can I make a counter or a comment on what you just?
Whatever you want, sir.
Yeah, so the reason why we're showing the 2 menu boards is typically the car stack that's required for even a busy store is about 6 cars. We're trying to alleviate any pressure by having the additional menu board to service guests even quicker. So technically we would be able to have a stack that's almost double what a typical drive-through Smoothie King would have to prevent any kind of backward stacking or pushover or fall over onto Calumet Avenue. And then as far as your parking incident goes, I spoke with Tom about that in the past. That's why we tried to leave a larger gap. If you take a look at the parking spaces in between, we have a 30-foot clearance, meaning if there was a car literally behind the other car in that drive-through menu board, you would still have enough lane to actually maneuver into a parking space. So we did try and account for that because, as you stated, that development across the street that Bruce Boyer did, I've been to that site a few times as well. The parking situation is not ideal there. I understand that people are able to get in and out, but to avoid that struggle of having the congestion of getting in and out, we try to leave a little bit more clearance room in there. And that's why we add the additional menu board to help with the car stacking. And I did speak with Bruce. He was planning on using both curb cuts because the site as is, there's one curb cut for the spa and there's this additional curb cut that's part of this easement for the pet hospital.
Well, the hard thing is trying to make assumptions, Mr. Patel, because you don't know how my 17-year-old daughter pulls in that lot or my wife, because I can't get them to pull in the garage in the right spots during the day.
I understand that. I also understand it's two different concepts that we're comparing, and I don't know how their site plan is laid out. I'm familiar with where it's located, but if I'm not wrong, their drive-throughs all the way around on the back, and I'm not sure how it's kind of stacking they even currently have.
How many stores do you have and how many have drive-throughs and how many do not have drive-throughs? I believe you're one in towards Lake Central High School does not have a drive-through, correct?
So I do not own the one in St. John. I have 7 open locations across Indiana, Illinois. So Maryville, Cherville, Crown Point, Chicago Ridge, Crestwood, Plainfield, and Shorewood. Out of those, we have 2 that have online order pickup windows. None of them have existing drive-throughs. There is a franchisee that I know that is in Yorkville that just developed a freestanding drive-through. And the assumptions that we're making are based on his, and he is number 3 in the entire territory.
So none of yours have a drive-through right now?
Correct.
And Sharon, do you have some questions?
Well, I am also troubled by, the drive-through. I think it would probably work much better if it was on a corner lot than where you're proposing to put it. So I too am like Roland, and I just don't think I can support it the way that it is now.
Okay. Anyone else on the board would like to speak about the issue of a drive-through? Mr. Patel, I understand what you're trying to do. We want you to maximize the profit and you have to make financial decisions, but it is troubling to me. And we've had experience with the Dunkin' Donuts, certainly, that with the drive-through facility on Calumet Avenue, it's been very difficult in a tight situation like this. But we encourage you to come to Munster. We're just trying to come up with a solution for you.
Mr. Chairman, if there's no other comments, I'll make a motion to set this for public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Raffin, it's perfectly okay. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, let's call for the vote. Tom?
Can I just clarify, you're speaking to all 3 of the petitions?
Yes.
To public hearing, to a blanket.
Tom, would you?
Yep. Sharon Mayer,
Yes.
Jonathan Peterson,
Yes.
Daniel Buxa, Roland Raffin,
Yes.
Chairman Friedman.
Yes. Very good. Mr. Patel, we look forward to seeing you at the next meeting and hopefully we can come to a resolution of all this.
Thank you.
All righty. Next on the agenda, let's see. We had a public hearing for B Core Corridor Chicago. Is it my understanding that Kimberly Horn has requested another continuance?
Yes, I spoke with the representatives from GE 2 weeks ago to determine whether or not they were going to present their petition tonight. And they indicated that they are still interested in doing the project. However, they had some scheduling conflicts and they weren't able to be here tonight, but they do plan on attending the meeting in July and presenting their findings that were requested by the Board of Zoning Appeals with respect to how some of the operational changes that they've made has alleviated some of the congestion at their facility at 475 Superior. So, but for the time being, they are requesting another continuance.
Okay. Do we have to act on a motion of that continuance, Mr. Wickling?
Mr. Chairman, before I make a motion, Tom, I just want to urge, obviously, construction cycle is here. Getting into July, if we're planning on having them go through this project, we don't want to be October, November, and during the winter, close to winter season, can't do the concrete paving.
It's a good point, and it's quite likely that even if the board does approve it, they probably won't build it this year, just simply because, yeah, there's going to be an issue with construction season as well as their own busy season and being able to juggle those things. So they did ask about, what would be the, how long would the variance last?
Well, the problem is, if they go into their busy season again, and we have the same truck traffic problems, and we've been sitting on it for a year and a half, and we can force their hand, then we kind of look like fools on the commission for not forcing them to get this project done in a reasonable amount of time before we, put hardships on those businesses that are all feeling the brunt of the traffic flow due to this trucking business.
Well, the only alternative would be to approve it tonight without any further presentation.
Or you say your permit or your variance is good till November 25th. And if you don't, you have to come back and do it again.
So,
It's not a
Tom,
big- Sharon, you would know, looking at this project, it's not a very big project. It wouldn't take that long to complete this project.
right, oh, God, no, I mean, if we gave them approval now, it'd be done in a
30
month.
days.
Yeah.
30 days.
So, but the question is, Tom, what's been going on? I mean, has truck traffic been reduced in the last 3 months?
I haven't seen the actual numbers, the traffic volume numbers, but I can tell you anecdotally, it seems like it has. We haven't been getting the same number of complaints that we had a few months ago. So they have made some changes, and it appears to be working to a certain degree, yes.
Yeah. Well, I guess that they told us, in one of the earlier meetings that the holidays were their busiest time. So, I mean, are we, let's say that they were to come to next month's meeting, are we able to tell them that we want this work completed in the next 60 days?
I would say that, to be honest with you, I don't know. That's probably more of a legal question. Our zoning ordinance gives, I think, a year for a project to be completed.
But even though they've been dragging their feet for 6 months?
And this is the new ordinance, Tom?
Yeah, this is the new ordinance, the current ordinance. I mean, they've been collecting the data that was requested of them and making the operational changes.
Right. Well, I suppose, I mean, I guess all you can do is encourage them to come and, let's get this thing done and over with so that they can get it done before the holidays.
Right. Well, we can have clarification. Did what Mr. Wickland say that we could put a time frame on it, or did he not say that? I couldn't hear.
They've asked for a continuance. I would say one of their options tonight would be a grant continuance. If they don't show up next month, they're not ready, then it's over. Tonight.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I will make a motion to grant the continuance contingent on the fact that this will be the final continuance granted by the board.
I'll second that.
Okay, very good. All right, let's call for the vote. Tom?
Sharon Mayer,
Yes.
Jonathan Peterson,
Yes.
Daniel Buxa.
Yes.
Roland Raffin.
Yes.
Chairman Friedman.
Yes. All right, very good. All right, the next item on the agenda was that, if I remember correctly, we asked for a rendering, or a complete rewritten of the findings of fact for BZA docket number 21001, where we had denied the request for a sign, a monument sign. So we now have the wording of the findings of fact before us. I'll entertain a motion to approve this.
Mr. Chairman, move to approve the findings of fact as rewritten.
Mr. Chairman, I second.
Okay, Tom, please call for the vote.
Sharon Mayer,
Yes,
Jonathan Peterson,
Yes.
Daniel Buxa,
Yes.
Roland Raffin.
Yes.
Chairman Friedman.
Yes. Okay, very good. Is there anything else, Tom, that we have to bring up tonight?
There is nothing other than I'll just let you know that the governor of Indiana has extended the public health emergency for another month. So we are still under the flexible public meeting open door laws with respect to how we conduct the meetings. But I anticipate that in the very near future, that executive order will expire and not be extended, which will require us to change some of our procedures with how we hold electronic meetings. And I would expect that the town council will adopt some policy with respect to how we do that. So I'll provide that information to you all when it becomes available and when we know a little bit more, but I would expect that there will be certain attendance requirements for in-person attendance. And there are some rules that have been developed, but they're not in effect yet. So stay posted on that.
Very good. Thank you very much. Okay, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second.
All right, please vote in favor of it by saying aye,
aye.
Aye.
and have a good summer, so to speak, and I'll see you on the 13th of July.
Thanks, Stuart. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, Stuart.
All right, very good.
Bye-bye.
Not bad.
We've been doing work with them. Yeah, so we're able, he's a good guy. He's like the head coach. They would community. Let's introduce my dad. Who's a famous veteran. Yeah, that's it.
This is someone else.
Okay.
Good.
You guys are back.
Yeah, we have it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My kids were playing softball. They all came in.
In your face, you know.
So red.
My coaching walk today felt like an exercise.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's a decent prayer.
You remember all their names, as a matter of perspective.
I believe that I was absolutely crazy. I was like,
Yeah, right, the veteran over here.
no, well, it's,
Well, we're,
but.
let's stay where we are.
First, I was really like,
Yeah.
but I have to see. Huh?
I know,
Well,
I know some of your neighbors. I don't know if you know about
Get some
the Weary guys. Garrett, Weary guys.
and that was just part of it.
Current?
More like everything.
Current.
Yeah, they live on, they come back a second time now.
The last
Oh,
guy.
yes.
Too many variants.
There's that.
Have 3 kids.
No,
of them.
They're young, right? Doesn't work.
They say,
Your point about
Yeah.
marathon is actually right.
They've got a boy.
Every time.
Well,
family goes through here for 8
Yeah.
years, as long as I lived here. I mean, I'm sorry, it's never been done.
Well, I don't know. I guess I did it right. My kids are eating once a year.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, exactly. I am new. Yeah.
I heard this one and I heard the other.
Yeah, I speak.
Yeah, no, my,
Speaking of it, oh.
stepdaughter's 12, and she
Speaking
goes
of
to
it, absolutely.
Catholic school.
I know.
When they do that at night.
Pardon me? Yeah, I don't go. And so I spoke up last time.
She wants to get out.
Been wanting hearings.
Are you ready, Tom? Tell me when.
Worked on this a long time.
One second.
No, I don't know them well, just know of them.
Mr. Graffin, how are you doing?
That's my.
He enjoyed it. I think I enjoyed it too much. It was a fun place.
All right, folks, let's go. I'm going to call this meeting of the Munster Planning Commission to order for Tuesday, June 8th, 2021. We all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Vanderwood, roll call, please.
Councilor Melvin,
Present.
Councilor Gardner,
Present.
Councilor Chulowitz.
Present.
Stuart Friedman,
Present.
Roland Raffin,
Here.
Brian Speck is absent with notice, and Chairman Baker.
Here. All right, we have quorum. Next up is the approval of minutes from May 11th, 2021. Or any motions, modifications, changes? What say you?
Mr. Chairman, I will make a motion to accept the minutes of the May 11th meeting.
There's a motion to accept. Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, I will second that motion.
And a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Out there forever to look at the website. Next up is a.
Bill, sorry to interrupt. One of the requirements we've learned for holding these virtual meetings is that all votes have to be taken by roll call.
Roll call. Okay.
So,
So let's do roll call then.
okay.
I would hate to break the law again, Tom. Is that a Roberts rule or is that something that's just
It's a state law.
state law? Okay,
Constitution. I wouldn't want these to stand forever.
even on minutes.
Yes.
10-4.
Okay, Councilor Mellon,
Yes.
Councilor Gardner,
Yes.
Councilor Tulowitzki,
Yes.
Stuart Friedman,
Yes.
Roland Raffin.
Yes.
Chairman Baker.
Yes. Okay, law is the law. Next up is a preliminary hearing for PC docket number 21-005. Stephen Westenberg requesting approval of preliminary plat consolidating the 3 residential lots at 10-125 Norwich, 10-111 Norwich, and 10-110 Whitehall Garden. Mr. Vanderwood.
Thank you. Yes, the applicant is Stephen Richard Westerberg. As you stated, he is requesting approval of a preliminary plat, which would consolidate 3 lots in the West Lakes Phase 4 subdivision. He plans to kind of expand his own residential lot to construct some accessory structures. And in order to do that, he needs to consolidate the 3 lots onto which, or add the 2 lots onto which he hopes to expand his property. He currently owns all 3 of these lots and had previously consolidated 2 lots here at the end of this block. That was completed last year, and he's constructing a home or a house on that consolidated lot. This is a fairly simple application because it's just 3 residential lots. Everything has been, all the public improvements have been completed in connection with West Lakes Phase 4. The only exception being sidewalks, which are typically constructed at the time that a residence is built. And he's provided a plat of subdivision, which is shown here. Zoom out. So you can see the proposal. And, of note, this has been reviewed by our town engineer, and he's retaining all the existing drainage easements, which do have some surface drains in them. So that will be maintained both with the consolidated lots and with any future construction built on the lots. Also provided a site plan, which was provided to us, and it's so you can have a sense of the end plan for the property. The existing home that's under construction is shown here. It might be difficult to see, but that's being constructed on the previously consolidated 2 lots. This is the second lot and the third lot that are proposed to be added. And there's a proposal here for a sports court. And he's also provided to us some additional renderings of some backyard features like patios and gardens and a putting green over here on lot 225. So I'll just mention that this is preliminary plat. It requires a public hearing. So we will need to request that tonight. He'll post legal public notice of the public hearing that'll be held next month. And he can have preliminary plat approval as well as final plat approval next month. The board agrees to it.
Thank you. All right, bring it back to the board. Any comments, questions, statements?
Mr. Chairman, just one comment. Tom, does this all meet the local covenants for the subdivision as well?
That's a good question. We did refer him to John Reed and Brian Specs, who we've been informed are the administrators of those covenants. I don't know, the applicant is here. I don't know if he met with them or not, but that's something that they will have to determine. It's sort of, it can happen whether or not, I mean, the subdivision can happen whether or not his ultimate build-out proposal meets those covenants, because there's really no reason why he can't, if he's meeting our subdivision ordinance, consolidate these lots and expand his own lot. So I have seen some of the renderings of his proposals. I don't know if it meets the covenants. My hunch is that it may not, but that's why we referred him over to the West Lakes to get that confirmed.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Tom, are there any limitations per the ordinance to how many lots can be consolidated for one individual's use?
We really don't have a maximum lot size. So that's really not a thing for us. Okay, we looked into it because it's a little bit unusual in this location, but there's really fine. He's limited to a certain degree by other aspects of the zoning ordinance, such as the maximum size of an accessory structure, maximum setback or minimum setbacks and things like that. That's really what governs our zoning ordinance. But it really doesn't contemplate a maximum in most instances for residential. In all instances, I should say, it mostly contemplates minimums. So there's a minimum lot size, minimum setbacks and things like that.
Okay, so everything meets the requirements for the subdivision ordinance.
Yeah, and it's already kind of passed through the first time when West Lakes Phase 4 was approved. So this is just, just on just these individual lots. There's really, like I said, the only concern that we would have had would have been the drainage, and he's preserving those easements with the drains, the backyard drains. So.
Okay, thank you.
Are the covenants public record for this subdivision? And have they been submitted to the town?
Yeah, I have a copy of them.
If you could send one to me, that'd be great to be able to see how that works. Also, I know that this is an intersection of 2 streets, but does the law or the public sector view this as a corner lot, and how would fencing be handled based on the ordinances that we passed?
Yeah, we would look at these lots or this lot as a corner lot, even though it's not a standard typical corner lot. So he would have to comply with the 35-foot building setback, which is on both sides, which is essentially the front yard setback, because there are lots to the north that front on those streets. So because his side yard is next to someone else's front yard, his side yard has to comply with the front yard setbacks. So you have a sort of a consistent building line on that street.
Based on the usage, is he familiar with what that entails and how that's gonna work, and is he still willing to move forward?
Yeah, in fact, that 35-foot setback is shown on the plat, and it's shown on the site plan that was submitted. And so all the proposed improvements are within that building envelope.
And is this a requirement to send out to the neighbors as it relates to what's going on with this particular parcels?
Yeah, next month, if you grant it, it will be a public hearing. He'll have to send letters, certified mail to everyone within 200 feet of the property. He'll post a legal notice in the newspaper and put a sign on the property, all advertising the date and time of the public hearing.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I'll just mention Steve Westberg is here. if you're curious.
Mr. Westbrook, you have anything to say?
There's no one else in the room. No, I mean, I didn't know a year ago what I'd be
Can you
doing.
come up and just do the whole formal thing, because I get yelled at when I don't follow the law.
Yeah, plus I can't see you because.
Just your name and your address for public record.
For an address, Steve Westerberg, 133 Mayfair Way, Munster. Just 3 blocks.
No, I'm just wondering if you have anything to say.
No, I mean, I didn't know I was planning on doing from a landscaping perspective, but once I learned what some of the rules are, that it necessitated combining the next two. If all I was gonna do was softscape on the other two, then I wouldn't be sitting here, and then I would just continue on doing what I'm doing. But what I want to do does require some more hardscape, and the only way to get additional hardscape area is to combine all 4 lots.
Thank you.
Now, the size of what it can end up being, I'll figure that out, but I'm not gonna approach that topic with the local covenants until I know. And there's no point in going forward until I know that this is good going forward. So,
Yeah, and I certainly, while we're talking about the plat of surveys now or combining these lots, there is a concern of hardscapes and things like that affecting drainage and lighting with some of the sports courts and things like that, potentially could affect the subdivision and some of your neighbors. So I guess there is a concern that we would be, hesitant about and caution you to, follow those covenants and be aware of that, because I'm aware of some situations in the past where people have put things in their backyards and have caused drainage issues or extra lighting that affects neighbors and things like that. So
Go-kart tracks.
Yeah.
Well, the only thing I could say, I don't know, I'm not doing lighting, so that's not an issue. And with drainage, I've hired a lot of people that have been around doing this for a long time, but whatever we end up doing, there is not.
Okay.
I don't skimp on things, and I always want to make sure.
You don't want standing water in your property either.
No.
All right, thank you.
Nor anybody else's.
Right.
Understand. Thank you. I have no other questions.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if there's no other comments, I'll set this for public hearing.
There's a motion to set for public hearing. Is there a second?
No second.
And a second, Mr. Vanderwood, we have to vote on this.
Counselor Mellon,
Yes.
Counselor Gardner,
Yes.
Counselor Tulowitzki,
Yes.
Stuart Friedman,
Yes.
Roland Raffin,
Yes.
and Chairman Baker.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Work with staff as it relates to going through all the processes, getting ready for next month. All right, next up, public hearings, PC 20-008. B Corp, Quarter Chicago LLC, represented by Kinley Corp, et cetera, install landscaping screening on the GE Appliance Distribution Center at 475 Superior Avenue. Applicant has requested a continuance for how many months now? Okay,
Mr. Chairman, we made a motion to BZA to give him 1 more month. I'd be happy to make the same motion for 1 more month of continuance if he doesn't, if they don't present next month. I'll be requesting next month to withdraw this from the agenda.
understood. Tom, what's going on as it relates to the challenges with this particular site? I mean, is there still truck traffic issues? Is there still concerns from the neighboring businesses? Are we still looking at the same issues from 6, 7 months ago?
I can tell you just anecdotally, it appears that some of the issues have been addressed. We're not receiving the same number of complaints. I haven't received any actually in the last few months. So it appears that some of the changes that they've made are working.
Or they're not being able to make appliances anymore like they used to?
Yeah, I mean, there could be other shortages, other issues as well.
Right,
Circuit boards or something like that.
absolutely.
But I get the sense that they're still very busy as business, but yeah, they've leased 2 offsite lots to store empty trailers. They've shifted a significant component, all of their Michigan business down to Kentucky. So a distribution center out in Kentucky. So they are making changes. Now, I don't know with any level of precision because that data is being gathered by GE and they plan to present it. However, the guy, Jonathan Goki, who's been sort of the spokesperson for them, is, I think he's in the Army Reserve or something like that. He was called up for his monthly or quarterly service time. So he wasn't available to come tonight, but he did indicate that they plan to be here in July.
Then I will second Mr. Raffen's motion.
All right, there's a motion to continue and a second. Any discussion? Either none, let's vote, Mr. Vanderwood.
Councilor Mellon,
Yes.
Councilor Gardner,
Yes.
Councilor Tulowitzki,
Yes.
Stuart Friedman,
Yes.
Roland Raffen,
Yes.
Chairman Baker.
Yes. All right, talk about it again next month. PC 20-009 is next up for Guy Costanza. Same situation, requesting approval of development plan for commercial development at 407-411 Ridge Road. Applicant is seeking variances which cannot be granted prior to the meeting. Staff recommends tabling. Same situation. Mr. Vanderwood?
It is exactly the same situation. They plan to be here in July. They finally have decided to move forward with their variances after requesting that they be tabled for many months as well. So they were at the preliminary hearing before the board tonight. The board zoning appeals granted them a public hearing for July. So I expect that they'll be back in July to seek approval of their development plan, provided that they receive approval of those variances. And if they don't, then it would probably be appropriate for the board, for the plan commission to deny the application because it doesn't comply with the zoning.
Have there any updates on tenants or potential use or anything like that?
Domino's Pizza.
Yeah, they have 2 tenants lined up, Little Italy carry-out Italian restaurant and the Domino's Pizza, another carry-out Italian restaurant.
Domino's is Italian? Kind of more the last name, you know? Tom, here's a question. When I'm looking at the proposed buildings, whether this parcel or Smoothing King, it seems like, you know, we went through all this aesthetic stuff, we brought in this consultant, but we're still getting just a square or rectangle box building with a parapet wall and a flat roof and yada, yada, yada. That's what we get.
Yeah, I mean, we do our best, but
Yeah.
sometimes,
I'll send you the picture of the Kitty Academy I went past in Frankfurt the other day. And it's not the same Kitty Academy we got here, I'll tell you that. And I'll send it to the rest of the commission, because we need to elevate our standards. If we're gonna put a building up by Ridge Road, it's gotta look, by the train station, it's gotta look nice.
Is that a standard that's set by the village of Frankfurt, or is that something that's done by the applicant?
I'm sure it's done by Frankfurt, because every applicant would come in as a developer building, you know, to put a rectangle box in with a parapet wall.
Well, they're gonna try to be as economical as possible, I understand, but were you able to research the requirements that Frankfurt had for that kiddie academy? If that's something that you like versus just saying, I like this, we should have that?
Well, I thought we did kind of have, jogs on our walls and different things you're supposed to have, right?
Yeah, we do.
Roof designs, I'm sure.
We do have those requirements. Right now, they're seeking variances for setbacks for parking location. They haven't provided updated, well, Smooth King has, but 47411 Ridge, we haven't seen a revised building rendering. So you may have seen one in the past. It doesn't match the site plan anymore, so we don't have a good sense of what they're going to be proposing as far as the building architecture. But they would have to comply with our standards. I mean, that's part of the problem, is that people don't necessarily believe that they have to comply with the standards, and they think that they can come to the Board of Zoning Appeals and come to the Plan Commission and just present things without getting approval. Why they would think that, but
But you can't stop them from going for the BZA if they want to try to go through that path.
yeah, I mean, if they submit a complete application, then that's the pathway towards them getting relief from the zoning board.
No matter what you say is site plan review or what the zoning ordinances say, they can apply for variance.
Right.
And we can say no.
We can always say no.
Right. I mean, how many variants can you give on one parcel that just doesn't show it? I mean, that doesn't prove it, it just doesn't work.
And we're trying.
I know, right? I mean, how many? I mean,
I know, I understand what you're saying, and I agree with what you're saying. I guess what the difficulty is, from what can the town do? Because we're talking about, parking requirements or whatever else. And again, the more that there's frontage in the front of the building or, whatever, is there a role that the town should be looking at to encourage the right type of development that's not always about parking or whatever else? To really, again, a couple spots on the street's not going to solve a parking issue for a restaurant. But at the same time, what can we do as a town to really encourage that type of right development? And again, certainly we have a planning document, but again, it's a document that who really knows what's in it.
well, that's why we have plan directors.
Well, again, I understand, but again, it's trying to make that a working document that people understand it, and also, are there public spaces for, gathering or parking or whatever else that can allow the developer to really develop their building? How we see fit, because again, we're asking for them to put additional money into some of those buildings. But again, the idea is that it's going to be a nicer building or more beneficial building in the long run.
But I mean, the other thing that we can try and do as a town is things like the streetscape and marketing and outreach, so that we have more tenants who want to come here into these places that are a bit more innovative, that maybe have higher price points and can do more sort of development. And I think with the train station, the depot, as Ken would call it, is definitely coming. It's going to change the landscape. It's going to change what it all feels like. And that, even though it's a small parcel right there, is prime property. That's a primo location. And so whatever goes there, I think it's reasonable to say it really needs to meet these standards. Or it's got to do something incredible that, people are going to come from all over just to experience this. And then you might be a little bit more lax with some of the other stuff.
Years ago, when we were first on it, you were on it before me, we had a Centennial Park with the old staff and everything down there. We did we did all the planning, right? And the guy running it said sometimes you have to
No, my point is that, a couple of things, I mean, Roland, you need to speak to how much it costs per foot to build a straight up box, making math easy, $100 a foot. During the standards that we have now, that might be $200 a foot. And when you're selling a $2 hamburger or $2, smoothie, how much are you going to be able to do to be able to make that work? So that's going to start forcing other people out, and that's fine, but that's part of the discussion as well. And how are you going to be able to do that? Same thing with the amount of sizes that you see up and down. We had this conversation for decades now on Calumet Avenue. It's not deep. You're not going to be able to get the number of cars in there that are going to be required for putting a big, huge building in a small lot. That's just the bottom line. And you're going to have to put a big building in there to make the real estate numbers work, because people, shocking enough, want to spend money in the community because they want to see a return. No return, no investment. So therein lies part of the business component. Are you going to just look for the aesthetics, or are you going to try to bring more investment to bring some additional taxes to the community?
I would just say to Roland's point, though, they're always, so taking 3 that are the same company, you mentioned Kitty Academy. Well, recently I looked at ours and I thought, well, it's remarkable how much nicer that one is than the one that's in Crown Point. And I'm like, they just went with what they could get away with. I've got a picture of it here. It's like ours is, and then the one you saw is much better. All 3 of those sell the same product.
Right.
So there's profit to be made, obviously, regardless of how nice the one is. And you know what I mean? So they'll always.
They're cheaper in Frankfurt.
Pardon me?
So there's a lot more taxes probably in Frankfurt than Munster.
And they might be charging more for that kid to go in there. We don't know that, but that's not part of this board's, purview.
And the aesthetics has an impact on who wants to move here, how many people want to move here, and what kind of property taxes that brings, and incomes that, disposable income that people have. So.
If it was easy, it'd be done already.
Well, I think we made some progress. I mean, I don't want to, that code we made, we did make a lot of improvements. There's no EPIS, and that's not the case in neighboring towns, so maybe now that we're living with it, we've often said, once you start living with it, then you might say there's little tweaks you can just to make this part a little better, so.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say from my perspective, everything that I've heard from the board is correct, right? There's multiple pieces that we need to put into place. There's no single thing that we can do that's going to necessarily get us exactly what we want, unless the town became a master developer, bought all the property and built it ourselves. So what we have to do is we have to use different tools, and we have, one tool is a really great streetscape and some on-street public parking. One tool is a train station that draws in, different maybe demographics or whatever. It creates a sort of a walkable hub. A zoning ordinance is just one tool, right? It's not a proactive tool necessarily. Zoning ordinance is more of a defensive tool because it just tells people what they can do, but it doesn't. If they don't want to do it, they're just not going to do it, right? So I agree with what everyone is saying. I mean, I don't think we've exhausted the types of tools that we can use. We talk off and on about different incentive programs. That's another tool that we could use, some facade program, some kind of business incentive to,
especially with TDD that come, offensive funds through that.
Yeah, I mean, so there's all sorts of different things that we can do.
It's like getting married, right? Someone comes and they propose, do you want to marry me? And you can say yes or no. It can be the right person or not the right person. If you're not attracting the right sort of proposals, you can do whatever you need to do to enhance your.
After you tried a couple times, and then who knows what happens.
We just have a bunch of divorces.
Yeah.
No, I think I really appreciated your comment about Dairy Queen. Smoothie King, and it's in and of itself, I don't think is a bad sort of business to be here. looking at, even on their rendering, the number of cars, it's like 6 or 8 cars are in there. And Dairy Queen has more space and it's out on Ridge Road.
And we made a double stacking on the way out to bring orders and all that kind of stuff, and it's still terrible.
And yeah, have you seen Starbucks since they haven't opened their lobby? Holy cow, it goes back to noodles.
Yeah.
I mean,
I've
it's
never seen a
unbelievable.
Starbucks that actually works wherever they put that.
Go to the one on Main Street, 41.
Oh,
you can't even get
oh,
it.
yeah.
And that's what became.
But these were all conversations we had when those came up. But the premise was it still got approved under the basis that they wanted them here in town regardless, and that's where they wanted to go. I mean, the concern with Starbucks, it was gonna back up onto Calumet Avenue, and that's valuable. I mean, just like the Dunkin' Donuts. I mean, that was a huge issue as well, just like the same thing with Boyer's deal. And that's a huge, dangerous situation, but the aspect at the time was it's better than a vacant carpet land that's been there for 6 years. So at some point, I mean, I hated, I fought 8 ways to Sunday about that. And they made them buy another parcel between the existing site and the Dunkin' Donuts because there was going to be a blind side there as well. And it made it really a challenge. And it's still a problem from the standpoint of safety. And, you know, I mean, you just elect to go or you're not to go. But it's a lot better than what it was. And it's definitely more a vibrant business activity than a vacant carpet land. So there's got to be a give and take as it relates to what you got and the hand that you have, because unfortunately, I wish I lived in, you know, Aspen as well, but this isn't Aspen. And we don't have that kind of a scenario. We almost don't have that kind of a platform to work on.
And we can be choosy. We have very little left.
Councilwoman, you got a little narrow parcel. You can only put so many things on that little narrow parcel. And you could leave it, you could keep it vacant, or you could try to do something with it, but that's all you've got to deal with.
But
But you can do a business without
Without
driving.
a drive-through, yeah. I mean,
It's vacant.
What I heard
He
from.
didn't have any of his other locations.
yeah,
What
it's obviously successful.
What I heard from him tonight and what I heard previously is that the cost of the land is such that he has to do the drive-through because the drive-through has higher revenue.
And after the COVID, everybody drives through now. There's
Yeah,
huge
but-
volume in it.
But it doesn't mean that he can't be in Munster. You know, there's other spots in Munster he could be at. You know, and again, that's all.
Calumet Avenue.
It's just, and again, part of it is looking at what Calumet Avenue is. And it, yeah, like you're saying, well, is it too narrow for some of the stuff? And how do we, you know, if it's 2 lots, it's gotta be 3 lots to make a building work or
If
something.
it's
like that.
too narrow for a drive-through and those type of businesses, then, you know, stop them. Tell them, not even close, not gonna get one. They're still gonna come and sit and talk to them.
I told him it would be a challenge to get a drive-through.
Yeah, and they're still gonna come through because they see the business. That's what they do for a living.
And who's to say that he still won't want to have, I mean, that gets so much traffic there. And people go to Jody's and there's hardly, you know, there's no drive. I mean, you go to, what's it, the yogurt place. They're in
Froyo.
Froyo. It's packed.
They wanted to put the smallest bullet.
Yeah, exactly. I don't.
But I really appreciate the, conversation, the variety of opinions. That really helps. At least I'm still pretty new to this, right? It really helps you think through it from different angles. So I appreciate everyone's opinions.
It's not easy. It'd be easy just to say yes to everything, right? I know.
Did we adjourn or no?
Did we vote on that for tabling it?
You haven't
Oh.
voted yet. In fact, no one's moved the table.
Okay.
I will make a motion to table the 407, 411 discussion.
I'll second the motion.
Motion and a second, any discussion? Either none, Mr. Vanderwood, we have to vote.
Counselor Mellon,
Yes.
Counselor Gardner,
Yes.
Counselor Tulowitzki.
Yes.
Stuart Friedman,
Yes.
Roland Raffin,
Yes.
Chairman Baker.
Yes. Either no findings of facts, is there any other business or additional items for discussion?
I'll just mention what I said at the Board of Zoning Appeals is that we're still under the emergency, the public health emergency executive order, so we're still permitted to do electronic meetings. But if that order is rescinded or it expires and it's not renewed, then we We will be able to do electronic meetings, but there will be additional rules that we'll have to follow, including a certain cap on the number of meetings that you can attend electronically. We have to actually keep track of who's been here and things like that. I haven't studied the rules all in much detail because they're not applicable yet, but.
And that's all so that we don't violate the law.
Right, right. So if that happens, like I said, it's been extended through June, but if it does not get extended through July, then expect to receive something from us giving some guidance about going forward with electronic meetings.
Okay, anybody else have anything for the good of the order?
Target, anything going on with Target?
Their building permit was approved, but they haven't picked it up. So
Are they doing all this stuff that we requested before as part of
they haven't changed
exterior
the
stuff?
plan. Yeah, they have, I mean, they're required to do that.
They're doing a new facade with the wood paneling inside and a trellis and all that stuff?
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, they ended up changing the material. It looks exactly the same, but it's a different type of material for that facade, because they found that some of their other stores, it was like falling off the wall. So they changed it, was this stone wood, which was like a aluminum, it's basically plastic. So they're changing that to like a cement.
Following the previous plan that we approved.
Yeah.
Anyone else? All right, next regular meeting is July 13th, 2021. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
There's a motion and a second. Do we have to vote on this now too, Tom?
No.
Are you sure?
Oh, well.
Well, that doesn't mean they're not breaking the law. All right, roll call to adjourn, Tom, because even though the council's breaking the law, we're not going to do it here on count planning.
Councilor Mellon.
Yes.
Councilor Gardner.
Yes.
Councilor Tulowitzki.
Aye.
Stuart Friedman.
See, you want to move it along, you can't move it along.
Chairman Baker.
No.
Piece of paper that tells you how to log in.
Check them
How to
out.
log in. Too much money.
Well, I gotta have a job.
Love it. How many months back were you on? On this already have the old job.
Okay.
All right, have a good, we'll see you next month.
Okay,
Good
good
night.
night.
Good night.
All right, everyone, thank you. Are you done, Roland?
Yeah, I got it.
That's it.
Rochelle, Illinois,
Rochelle. Way up north, right?
past, almost past, Cal, over toward Rockford.
Cal.
That's tough.
Oh, geez.
Oh my gosh. And when I passed it, see, that's funny, because when you said theirs was worse, I thought,
Look, you can't see their building.
oh, that's nice.
Red.
Yeah.
You know, you can't color that.
Well,
They all said- The amount of,
there's.
They have, you know, typical lines.
Is that a multi-tenant building or a single? Because isn't the Kitty Lane
This
era
has
a
double
multi?
on it too, but even their side is nice.
Yeah, that's nice. I mean, I think ours, like,
But then-
I'm with you, I'm tired of the flag. But this,